This is history about a ship that changed everything, even if people did not fully realize it at the time. When steam power started creeping into navies during the 1840s, most countries were still unsure what to do with it. Sail had ruled the seas for centuries, and steam felt dangerous, heavy, and unreliable. Back then, steam warships came in three basic types. Some older mid-sized sailing ships were converted and given weak steam engines with screw propulsion. These ships were slow, but they could move around harbors without relying on the wind, which made them useful for coastal defense. Other vessels were built with steam from the start, usually smaller ships like sloops and frigates. Harbor craft sometimes used paddle wheels, while frigates favored screw propellers so their gun decks stayed clear. The last and most controversial idea was adding steam power to ships of the line, the biggest battleships of the age. Navies hated the idea. Early engines were vulnerable to enemy fire, took up valuable space, burned coal that limited range, and worst of all, they introduced fire into ships already packed with gunpowder. Still, despite all that fear, some people believed steam was the future. One of those people was a French naval designer named Dupuy de Lome. Tensions between France and Britain were rising again, and that gave him his opening. He proposed something bold, a battleship designed from the keel up to use steam power with a screw propeller, not as a backup, but as a core feature. The ship was expensive, but it was purpose-built. At first, it was named Prince de Joinville, honoring a noble who loudly supported a stronger French navy during the Bourbon Restoration. The design was officially a two-deck ship, but new construction methods meant it could carry 90 guns, something that once required a massive three-decker. The order came through in July 1847, and construction began early the next year. Almost immediately, France exploded into another revolution. When the Second Republic took power, the ship was renamed again. Then politics shifted once more. Louis Napoleon Bonaparte began gathering control, and before long, the ship received the name it would be remembered by forever: Napoleon. Honestly, putting a Bonaparte in charge of France and naming a battleship Napoleon made the outcome feel inevitable. The ship finally entered service in May 1852, just before Napoleon III crowned himself emperor. Officially, the name honored the original emperor, but everyone knew the symbolism. Once operational, the ship shocked just about everyone. Even with only 2 full gun decks, its length of 255 feet gave it a displacement of over 5,000 tons, rivaling the largest sailing battleships of the era. The armament was brutal. The lower deck carried 32 30-pounder guns and 4 heavy shell-firing guns. The middle deck added 26 more 30-pounders and another 4 shell guns. On the open upper deck sat 14 shell-firing guns and 10 carronades for close combat. What truly set the ship apart was speed. With a single engine producing roughly 900 to 1,000 horsepower, depending on the trial, Napoleon cruised comfortably at 12 knots and could nearly reach 14 under ideal conditions. For a ship of the line, that was unheard of. A 4-bladed screw pushed her through the water, and because it could not be lifted clear, the crew disconnected it from the shaft when sailing to reduce drag. Her biggest weakness was logistics. Coal and machinery took up space, so she could not carry as many supplies as pure sailing ships. That limited her mostly to European waters. Even so, her existence kicked off a full naval arms race between Britain and France. Ships of the line were either converted to steam or designed around it from scratch. Napoleon herself saw real combat during the Crimean War, fighting alongside the Royal Navy instead of against it. Ironically, she proved her worth by using steam to place herself exactly where she wanted during bombardments. More than once, she acted like a tugboat, towing sailing ships into position or pulling them out when the wind turned against the Allies in darkness. One interesting fact people often miss is that her engine design became a lesson learned the hard way. The heavy-geared transmission absorbed power and caused reliability problems. By 1860, the ship received new engines that were technically less powerful on paper, but delivered better real-world performance. Another little-known detail is that her crew numbered over 900 men, a massive floating community that reflected how seriously France took this ship. And despite her success, she cost roughly one-third more than comparable sailing battleships, proving that speed and innovation always come at a price. Impressed by the promising, at least theoretically, performance of the first fast, screw-powered ship of the line, the French Ministry of the Navy approved construction of an entire class of 8 similar battleships. These vessels were laid down between March of 1853 and March of 1855 at several shipyards. Notably, the first 2 ships, Algeciras and Arcole, were ordered under the 1852 naval program as substitutes for 4 previously planned 550 horsepower frigates. At the time, 90-gun ships were officially classified as third-rank vessels, a status that did not reflect the real combat value of Napoleon. This was corrected in 1855 when the entire class was reassigned to the second rank, citing their greater size and displacement. Despite sharing comparable dimensions and a displacement of roughly 5,040 metric tons, the ships differed considerably from Napoleon. They were equipped with simpler, more reliable engines that eliminated the complex geared transmission. The internal layout of machinery and boiler spaces was also revised, producing a visible external change. Unlike Napoleon, her sister ships had only one funnel. With the exception of Napoleon and Algeciras, all ships eventually received lifting propellers, despite the original objections of their designer, Henri Dupuy de Lome. During trials, Algeciras produced 2,075 indicated horsepower and reached 13.014 knots. Other ships were slightly slower. Intrepid, despite generating 2,204 indicated horsepower, achieved only 12.24 knots. After re-engining, Napoleon herself reached 12.94 knots. Such figures depended heavily on conditions such as displacement, sea state, and crew experience. Armament varied between ships. Algeciras and Imperial carried 18 36-pounder guns and 16 22-centimeter shell guns on the lower deck, 34 30-pounders on the upper deck, and 20 16-centimeter shell guns on the weather deck. Arcole and Redoutable instead mounted 20 lightweight 30-pounders and 2 rifled 16-centimeter guns on the upper deck. Ville de Nantes displayed the greatest variety. By 1863, her lower deck carried 24 30-pounder guns and 10 rifled 16-centimeter guns. The upper deck held a mix of 30-pounders and 22-centimeter shell guns, and the weather deck combined rifled and shell-firing 16-centimeter guns. The final ships, Ville de Bordeaux and Ville de Lyon, reflected rapid artillery progress, mounting 34 rifled 16-centimeter muzzle-loading guns of the 1858 pattern on the lower deck, while retaining smoothbore 30-pounders above. Napoleon herself was rearmed after 1862 along similar lines. After the Crimean War, France faced little naval opposition, though rivalry with Britain persisted without open conflict. Far more serious were the technical problems of early steam machinery. A letter written in May of 1859 by Admiral Jurien de la Gravière described a single day filled with breakdowns, repairs to Eylau, a failure aboard Impétueuse, and a dangerous malfunction on Napoleon herself. Still, progress never waits. Less than 10 years after her launch, ironclad warships like Gloire and Warrior appeared on opposite sides of the Channel. Overnight, Napoleon went from revolutionary to outdated. She remained in reserve for a while, useful but no longer dominant. In the end, she was broken up in 1876. That ship marked the moment when steam truly took control of the battle line. Sail never fully recovered.